context from staff. Fortunately, in this case, there have been no changes, so the ones that were distributed yesterday will stand, but that is not our usual practice.
So it's 9:30. Let's say 30 seconds. We'll get started here. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the December 16th, 2020 meeting of the Transit Commission. I've received no regrets, and the commissioner, could the commission coordinator, Eric, if you could please call the roll call, please.
Commissioner Brockington.
Morning, here.
Commissioner Caricato. Commissioner Gower.
Here.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Here.
Commissioner McKenney.
Good morning.
Commissioner Olson.
I just received a message that he's having technical issues and the clerk's office is working with him to join us. So he can't answer for a roll call, but he will be in on the meeting, hopefully.
Commissioner Suds.
Here.
Commissioner Tierney.
Present.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Wright Gilbert.
Good morning.
Vice Chair Klutzy. Chair Hubley.
Present.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, is there any declarations of interest from any of the commission members? Okay, seeing none. Are the minutes of the Transit Commission meeting of Wednesday, November 18th carried?
Carried. Carried.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got just two items on the agenda today. The Confederation Line and Bus Service update, we'll obviously hold that. There'll be slides and some discussion on there. Item number 2, the delegation of authority for contracts awarded for the period of January 1st to June 30th for the Transit Commission. Is that carried?
Can we please hold that item, Mr. Chair? I have some questions.
Oh, sure. Okay. All right. Then let's go back to item number 1 and Confederation Line Bus Service update. Mr. Manconi, if you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members of Transit Commission. Just before we start, I just wanted to take a moment to share with the Commission that Jocelyn Beijing, who many of you know, she's my Chief of Staff, has announced her retirement. She's leaving us after 30 years of service. January the 11th will be her last day. And Chair, with your indulgence, I wanted just to take a moment to acknowledge her great work. She's worked with me for 20 years in the various roles that I've held at the city. And in addition to all the strategic files and the large transformational files that she's held in the last number of years, she's been instrumental in the equity inclusion program at the city of Ottawa with OC Transport in particular. When I arrived here 9 years ago, it was a heavily male-dominated organization. Jocelyn has been instrumental in hiring and promoting female leaders. We had some of the most senior leadership roles in bus and rail in Canada. The equity inclusion lens, I can't say enough about it. You'll recall a few years ago, we had some concerns about what was going on in the workplace. And Councillor Kavanaugh knows that I can remember our call like it was yesterday. Jocelyn rolled out a respectful workplace mandatory training program that every single employee is receiving. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Jocelyn and her great work. She's a quiet, silent leader that has helped me tremendously, the organization and the community. So congratulations, Jocelyn, for all your years of service. Mr. Chair, members of Commission, I'm going to ask Mr. Charter to walk you through the update on the rail piece. I just want to say a few words about the TSB. I I cannot speak on their behalf today. That's a regulatory requirement. And I just want to make sure that we just watch ourselves in terms of opinions of TSB. I cannot offer those to you. I will share what they have shared with us at the various meetings. We're an open book in that regard. I just want to know that I can't speak on their behalf and I can't state their positions and so forth. The other thing I want to address head on, because I've already seen some comments in social media about, are the trains safe? Safety is paramount. It is at the top of every railroad and bus operation in the world. And I just want to lay the context to make sure that we've shared all the appropriate information with you. Sitting at the table since day one of this issue with the wheels, we have our Chief Safety Officer, Brandon Richards, who reports to me. We have your independent safety officer that reports to City Council and the City Manager. And a reminder, I'm firewalled from that individual, Sam Barata. He's a railroad expert. He's been fully engaged. We have Alstom's Chief Safety Officer. We have the TSB. We also have a hired professional steel wheel expert at the table that we've hired. So I just offer that in the context of the lenses that are applied. And I can tell you that on the minute that I was notified, which was immediately of the situation, the first question the CEOs of railroads ask is, do you ground the fleet? In other words, you put everything to a complete stop. And I can tell you that everyone has been unanimous that everything that we're doing enables us to continue with safe operation of the fleet, and we would never ever put anybody at risk, whether it's our employees or our customers. So the daily inspections that you're going to hear about, the replacement of the wheels you're going to hear about has been rolled out, and there's nobody from all those safety lenses saying do not use the trains. With respect to numbers, I think there's been a lot of confusion out there in terms of what's been replaced and what hasn't. We have 38 single cars of the fleet. 13 of those cars have had all their wheels replaced. That's hundreds of wheels. Alstom did not have to do that. They did that on their own, and while they're waiting for some specialty equipment to do adjustments to those jacking screws. They're continuing to inspect the remaining 25 vehicles on a daily basis to ensure that there are no defects, no issues. And they are replacing wheels until the specialty equipment arrives. Once that equipment arrives, they then can inspect the wheel. If there is jacking screws that need adjustments and there's no deformities to the wheels, they can then make the adjustments and don't have to go to full replacement. But we're not at that point right now. So 13 trains have been done. 14th train is nearing completion, or 14th car is nearing completion. So, and then once a wheel is replaced, you go into the normal inspection mode associated with those wheels. So they move off of the daily and they receive their regular maintenance. So the wheels that have not been replaced are getting a daily inspection right now, which TSB has been involved in. The safety officers have all signed off on. Your independent safety officer has been engaged on, and so forth. So I just wanted to set the context in terms of that, because I had some questions last night and today on the information that I released. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to Mr. Charter and Mr. Scrimgeour.
Thank you, John.
All right, thank you, John. And I'll just wait for the presentation to come up there. Perfect. And if you can go to the first slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, so overview of the presentation. Start with overview of the performance of line 1, update on the rectification plan, those 7 key items that were impacting our service reliability. I'll turn things over to my colleague, Pat Scrimgeour, at that point. He'll talk about the transit recovery update, as well as a little brief update on COVID-19. So next slide, please. So, you know, the next 3 slides, you're going to see it's the same graphs that we presented the last few Transit Commission meetings. You know, this one shows the service delivered, in comparison to the planned service for the entire month. Continue to see, you know, August, September, October, November, good performance in terms of reliability, that 97, 98%. You know, we haven't seen a repeat of what we experienced back in January, February of last year, those low percentage months in which were very, very challenging for our customers. So we finished the month of November at just over 98%, and so far for the month of December, up to and including December 13th, the Sunday, we're at about 96%, and I'll explain a little bit the next slide. Why we're a bit lower than where we were in previous months. So you can go to the next slide, please. That'd be great. So this slide, combines. It looks at the overall service trend, which is that wavy line running across, as well as each dot is the actual service delivered on any given day. So similar to the previous slide, you could see that the service trend so far for the month is below that 97% threshold that we use as sort of a barometer as to if it's above the 97%, those tend to be really good days for our customers. And generally when we fall below 97%, there's been some challenges and there's definitely been some impacts to our customers. So we're below that 97% so far for the month of December. And you'll note that there's 6 dots there, or 6 individual service days that are below that 97%. So that's that variability or lack of consistency from day to day, and that's what's driving the average down. So we've had a few occurrences so far in the month of December that resulted in some challenging commutes for our customers. They almost all occurred between in the week of December 5th to 11th. But if the remainder of the month trends like we have been the last couple of days and trends consistently with the previous months, we could see that jump back up to 97, 98%. But obviously those I say those outlier days or those challenging service days, I mean they're obviously going to remain. That's what's been experienced so far. So we want to see all those dots, all those service days congregated at the top of the screen. Above that 97%, we all want to see them tightly clustered together because that shows one, reliability, and then consistency from day to day. Go to the next slide, please. So, this slide ties the two together. For the month of November, we did see a little bit more variability, but the average was above the 97%. As I said, it was just over 98%, and we had those 2 outlier days there that impacted service. So far for the month of December, as I said, up until December 13th, our average is below 97%. That's why that bar is red. And as I said in previous commission meetings, you want that bar to be as thin as possible or as short as possible, because that shows that the service is consistent day in, day out. So those outliers that you saw on the previous slide is bringing the average down. And as I said, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it anyways, but those have been some challenging days for our customers. But overall, as I said, I think December if we continue the positive trend that we've seen in the last couple days, we could see that jump back up. But those outlier days are still going to remain. Thank you. Next slide, please. So with regards to the rectification plan, there's a few updates here. Last Transit Commission talked about, we're moving into monitoring and making sure that the actions taken continue to produce the desired results. And that's where we're at for a few of those things. So, with respect to, the vehicle brakes and the overhead catenary system, the work on both those fronts is largely complete. And we are moving into the monitoring, making sure that, they continue to, provide the reliability that we expect, that our customers deserve. And, and where we're at is making those seasonal adjustments or, those bi-monthly checks and the adjustments associated with it. So, with regards to vehicle brakes, when you get into the winter season, cold steel wheels on cold track, you sometimes make brake rate adjustments. And similarly with the overhead catenary system, the metal wire that provides power to the trains, there's, as it gets cold, metal tends to contract, and when it warms up, it tends to expand. So we're always out there, RTG is always out there making those adjustments to the catenary system to make sure it continues to function as it is. We want to see their maintainers out there on the line doing these things. That's the expectation, and they are out there, which is a good thing. So so both those vehicle brakes and the overhead catenary system, we're at that monitoring, making sure that the actions that have been taken continue to produce the desired results. With regards to the switch heaters, pleased to report that all the switch heater work is complete. It was completed the weekend of December 6th. So when we launched service on Monday, December 7th, we had, you know, the full suite of all the switch heater work completed. And I'll provide a quick summary of it on the next slide, but all that work is completed. The temporary service closures greatly assisted in their ability to get that done and in time for the winter, but as well, you know, it gave them the opportunity to do some additional work as well. There was some rail grinding that was done, as well as some track welds and some other work in the tunnel to, you know, deal with some other, you know, there's, you know, some areas where there, you know, there's leaks that they need to continue to focus on. So they were able to utilize the time to do other things as well. But then the main thing for me is, you know, all the switch heater work has been completed, which is what we expected and is what they delivered. Vehicle traction power. If you recall, last Transit Commission meeting, I said there's 21 vehicles that have been completed with the new inductors and contactors and that sort of thing. We're now up to 29 of 38 vehicles. We're still on track to be completed early in the new year. That's progressing well. And you know, as I said, we haven't had a reoccurrence of those power arcing events that since we've made modifications to the software and some of the other changes. So, you know, good progress there. Vehicle passenger doors. You know, again, I know I'm repeating myself from the last Transit Commission meeting, but you know, since that SIL2, the safety certified software was inputted onto the doors, we've seen very, very positive results. You know, doors and door issues tend to be one of the #1 causes for delays, you know, in all rail systems. For us right now, you know, we have had a few door issues, very, very minimal impact to service. Generally what happens is the operator is able to go attend to that door, take the door out of service, close the door, lock it, but then keep the train in service with a minimal delay of, you know, of a couple minutes at most. So we're seeing very, very few of those issues. And, you know, when they do occur, our operators are able to take action and keep service moving, which is great, real positive. The vehicle auxiliary power or CVS units in the HVAC, similar to what I said about the brakes and the catenary system. You know, the software updates are in place. They're producing the desired results. You know, at this point, we need to monitor and make sure that it continues to have those results. And you know, we know that the winter months tend to be the most challenging for us, or for vehicles and for systems. So we need to see the trend that we saw, you know, late summer into the fall. We need to see that continue over the winter months. So, you know, that there is said, software is in place, the changes have been made. And it's about monitoring and make sure that we continue to see those results. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I mentioned switch heaters. You would have seen this at last Transit Commission meeting. So, you know, all the switch locations have switch heaters. So all locations east or west of Tremblay Station have the electric heaters and have been upgraded with those, you know, we talked about those heat trace elements that literally heat up the rail and ensure that there's no buildup of snow or ice. That's all been complete. And then the 3 switch locations east of Tremblay Station have all been updated with gas and natural gas and propane switch heaters, which will provide that, you know, greater level of heat. And this is where we had all but one of our, you know, if you recall, all but one of our service-related disruptions were in the East End. So that's why we really focused on the gas-powered solution there, and that got completed over that weekend. In addition, you know, we talked about the alarm monitoring. So if the switch heater stops blowing heat for whatever reason, our control center, which is staffed 24/7, 365 days a year, will get an alert, and we can dispatch staff before it becomes an impact to service. You know, and we're in, you know, as we're at the early stages of all this work, we're also, you know, dedicating some of our field resources to be, you know, doing the field checks, you know, take a look, make sure that it is functioning. You know, there's certain locations where you can hear the switch heater going, and then there's other locations where, you know, you can use one of those heat thermometer guns and check. So we're using the alarm monitoring, and you know, we're augmenting that with our field staff, because we know this is one of those areas where, you know, there was a good number of impacts to customers last winter. And you know, we're putting a lot of effort into that. Yeah, so all the work is complete. So, you know, right now it's, you know, we know that the winter's coming. Our next snowstorm is soon. But you know, said we got all the work done, and we're monitoring it both through the control center and through our field staff. Next slide, please. With regards to the wheel cracks, and I know Mr. Manconi touched upon it at the beginning here, and you know, some of the information I may provide might be a little bit of duplication, but you know, it's important to note. So you know, yesterday the TSB did release a letter outlining some of the preliminary findings associated with their independent investigation. You know, since the wheel cracks were identified back in early July, the city has worked closely with RTG, ensuring the continued safe operations of the light rail fleet. We notified the TSB immediately of the occurrence, and RTG, you know, their vehicle manufacturer, also initiated their own separate investigation. You know, and that's when they implemented their daily inspection regime, which was supported, as Mr. Manconi indicated, by their chief safety officer, their engineers, and as well, you know, the city had the opportunity to, you know, be part of those discussions, and we included our vehicle engineers, our consultants, and you know, John mentioned, you know, we have a metallurgist that we've hired to help participate, and we've kept the regulatory monitor compliance officer, Sam Barata, the RMCO, involved throughout. The TSB letter suggests expediting the wheel replacement program, and to that end, RTG has been securing extra tools and resources in order to complete the wheel replacements at an additional site. You know, and the intent there is to speed up the process. We're still looking at you know, early in the new year in which that will be completed. But you know, they're still working on securing those extra resources so we can get that, you know, expedite this as quickly as possible. The TSB also indicated that there's a cable that may obstruct the view while inspecting the wheels. You know, the city and RTG have agreed to moving the cable, and you know, because we know that it'll enhance the inspection process. You know, anything we can do that will you know, make it easier, we're all for. And I can confirm that all the vehicles that are in service, this cable has been moved. So as we're going through the inspections, that cable, although you know, it was identified as a potential issue from the TSB, you know, we've been able to have that cable moved, no impact to the performance of the vehicles and of the fleet, and that's all been done already. Mr. Manconi had indicated that to date, 13 vehicles have had all their wheels replaced. This was done proactively as RTG was securing specialized wheel press equipment. You know, these wheels are, you know, it's a metal piece on top of a metal piece, and you do actually have to press them together. So you need specialized equipment to do that. So these 13 vehicles, with now having new wheels that have never been impacted by the jacking screw, they've now reverted to their normal monitoring and inspection cycle, which is approximately every 30,000 kilometers, or you know, approximately every 2 to 3 months. They would go through a detailed inspection where they're looking at those wheels. The remaining 25 vehicles continue to follow the daily inspection process that's in place. That is a requirement for those vehicles to go back into service. Is every day the vehicle needs to go through an inspection, looking at every single one of those wheels, and that's that inspection regime that I mentioned that was signed off by the vehicle manufacturers, their chief safety officer. So the remaining 25 vehicles continue to go through that daily inspection process. And once that new specialized wheel equipment is in place, and we're anticipating that January timeframe, RTG will commence replacing the remaining wheels that have been impacted by the jacking screw. So right now they've replaced all wheels on the vehicles, but once they have that specialized vehicle and the specialized equipment in place, they'll be replacing the wheels in which have had that jacking screw, and there's been an impact in terms of stress. And it's that jacking screw that creates the stress, which has the potential to create the crack. So they'll be focusing on replacing those wheels. And then just lastly, you know, as we have throughout this process since the beginning of July, we'll continue to work closely with the TSB and support their investigation any way that they need. So with that said, I'll now turn things over to my colleague, Pat Scrimger. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Could I have the next slide, Eric? Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chair, through to the end of November, transit ridership on our system has continued to be at 28% of the usual levels. That's measured since Labor Day. We're continuing to monitor ridership as customers return or as travel patterns change, and we'll continue to make adjustments as necessary. This next graph shows the ridership since the beginning of the effects of the pandemic from mid-March, when it dropped very, very quickly down to the lowest level you can see there in April and May, then the increase that we had over the summer, and then this very slight decrease after a peak at the beginning of September, very slight decrease through those weeks when we had the more stringent public health
Hey,
restrictions.
I should have done this last night.
Troy, you're
can't.
on. Troy, there you go. And then but as you can see, fairly stable the last few weeks through the month of November. And we'll continue to bring you updates on this as we see how we do in December and beyond. The next slide, please. So since the beginning of the pandemic, 48 of our colleagues out of approximately 3,000 of us have tested positive for COVID-19. 45 of those people have recovered and are back to work. The remaining 3 are at home recovering, and of course we wish them all the best. And with that, the next slide, please. I'll turn you back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Pat, for your presentation. At least before the meeting, there was nobody signed up for delegations. Eric, is that, can you confirm that? We have no delegations?
No delegations confirmed.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go right to questions to staff. And we'll just see. Okay, we can start with Councillor McKenney, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just a few questions on the wheel cracks, and just according to the advisory letter that we received from Mr. Manconi. I know it does gives us a bit of a clearer picture on what happened in terms of these jacking screws. I probably know more about jacking screws than I ever wanted to or expected that I would. But do we know why the wheels would be shipped to Alstom and then delivered to us? This process had never been used before. It was always, you know, those holes were filled with, you know, silicone plugs. They sent them to us with jacking screws that are only to be used to remove the wheels. It just seems like such an exceptional oversight on the part of the manufacturer and then Alstom, you know, to provide them to us that way. Have we ever gotten a reasonable and rational explanation for that?
Chair, great question. On that one, I'm going to default to TSB. We need to let TSB do their job, and they're into all those things. I think speculating or trying to anticipate why and all those things would queue jump their work. And I have the exact same questions, Councillor. Those are very valid. And I'm going to let the TSB do their work. And again, they're very regulated. They trump everyone in the room. And I can assure you that's why they're going to take a year. In the meantime, my number one thing is the system safe to run? If I've told TSB, if it's not safe to run, you better tell me. But they're going to dig into all those questions, and I have to let that run its course. I don't want to be speculating or trying to get in the middle of their discussions that they're asking Alstom to respond to.
Okay, fair enough. Then are the new wheels being delivered to us now, coming without those jacking screws installed on them?
Yes, Troy and Brandon, my chief safety officer, confirmed all that immediately. Yes, the new vehicles that we're getting from Brampton have that issue addressed.
Okay, and the letter also suggests that all original wheels be replaced, not just the ones where we're finding cracks. And is that what's happening? Will all wheels be replaced?
No, as I said in my opening comments, and again, the TSB has been at every single workshop, and if they objected, they would object. The plan is until the specialized equipment is here, they will replace the vehicles, and Alstom has done that. Once the specialized equipment is here, the TSB has been walked through what Alstom has done, and TSB doesn't approve anybody's work. They just tell you if they have a concern or not. And once the specialized equipment is here, they can then, if there is no deformities or cracks on the inspected wheel, they can then adjust the jacking screw, and the vehicle is good to go back into service without a daily inspection.
Okay, but again, I'm just looking at the letter, and it does say that, although ongoing daily inspections are being observed, some wheel cracks may go undetected, and the development of cracks in the area of jacking screws installed in the hub of the wheels may be more widespread than initially thought. Therefore, and this is just right off of the letter, it is suggested that OLRT and Alstom expedite the removal of all Licini resilient wheels that were originally installed on the OLRT fleet. So
Yep. No, absolutely.
So is that happening? I guess.
Absolutely. And look, Councillor, if I don't have a lot of answers to you, it's because we're quite frankly surprised that that letter got released, the day before Transit Commission, and what it doesn't reflect is that we've had numerous meetings since that letter got sent to us. And the TSB, I know they were speaking to Mr. Richards yesterday, said, and I quote the lead investigator, they are fine with everything we're doing. Tell your council that TSB is at the meetings, and that they are supportive of every measure we're doing. So once we got that letter, we scrambled the jets. We got them into a workshop with Alstom and all those safety people. And the question is always, are we doing everything that satisfies everybody's safety concerns? And I've heard no objections to date. And if there were any objections, trust me, from the TSB or anybody at that table, we would conform to any of those safety professionals and the steel well experts. But again, they're all sitting at the table, including your independent safety officer, who reports to Steve Kanalakis, doesn't even report to me. And you're welcome to call Steve and to call Sam Beretta and to get his views on this. And I share that because I think, the questions you're asking are very valid. They're the same questions that we ask every single day. And so the TSB has not objected to anything that we're doing and any approach. So while they wrote originally, hey, you should replace every single vehicle, we've walked them through the inspection regime. We've walked them through the fact that Alstom is bringing the specialty equipment, and there's been no objections. And again, they will not approve. They're not an approving body.
Okay, it's hard to put that toothpaste back in the tube, right? It's here in front of us. We have the letter, and it says such, and it's signed by the Director of Investigations of Rail and Pipeline. So, I
agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree.
It makes me wonder why TSB would say something and then not follow through on it. I have to be honest.
And I cannot speak on his behalf. I'm not authorized to. I can just tell you, as you're my governing body, that we immediately had workshops with them, many of them. And in fact, we're following up in writing to confirm everything. And there's been no objections. And the TSB would have told us if they objected to anything that we were doing.
So you're not recommending then removing all wheels?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I am not recommending that. I am recommending that the safety experts that are at the table have plotted out a course that has been presented to the TSB, to your independent safety officer, to my safety officer, and to the wheel experts, and to the safety experts of Alstom. And everyone has agreed on the plan that's before you.
Okay. Just one last question. I actually live at where the two rail lines meet, so I'm quite fortunate. So I've taken the Trillium line for years, actually, to go into Councillor Deans's ward to Chapters. The only time I went to Chapters was on that Trillium line, and now I take it, to get downtown, get into work. Why was the Trillium line so smooth and quiet, and this one, the Confed line, just isn't? It's even my kid, whose bedroom, is the window is close to the rail line, complains about the loudness, and it kind of shakes a little, as you're moving along. What is it about that wheel kind of rail interface that makes it so different?
Yeah.
The experience so different.
1 minute remaining.
So I agree with you, and you and I bumped into our walks when we're out in your neighborhood all the time. And Both you and others would remember that actually the Trillium line was quite noisy at the last stop at Bayview. There's a curve there, and we're straightening out that curve as part of the stage 2 build out. But on the LRT line, the reason there's noise is that RTM has to do some rail grinding. So they have to polish the railhead, the top of the rail. That will eliminate most of the noise. And also, I'm happy to report that they're using some specialty oil that the TTC is using in Toronto. Those of you that know the streetcars there, they're very, very noisy on curves. There's a new product that you literally put out with a syringe on the railhead, and it eliminates all the remaining noise. So RTM, as part of our independent review of recovery of service, the remedial plan, we have made it very clear to them the noise is excessive and the vibration that you're speaking about. So you've got the curve at Herdman, you've got some of the approaches at the stops. You remember the early months, very, very silent service. It will never be like that, never like the original, but the noise is not acceptable and the vibration, and that is on their work plan. When we gave them the shutdowns on the weekend, they have started to do some of the grinding. They need to do more, and they are doing more. They've actually got a very good company that will give them an annual plan with fixed blocks of time to do the grinding, because they've got limited engineering hours to do. But Councillor, you're absolutely right. That noise is not acceptable. It's going to go back to where it needs to, along with the vibration.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll pass it along. Thank you, Chair. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up is Councillor Tierney, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just to get back to the vibration, John, between last week, I took a ride on the train, and I'm seeing some posts this week from some constituents where they actually have this app on their Apple Watch, and it's showing 81 decibels of sound at that one corner that, you know, since the beginning, I've always kind of scratched my head. Why is it such a tight corner? Can you speak to how soon that might be fixed? And I guess the real question is, can we confirm that isn't leading to the degradation of the wheel system? We're talking wheel cracks, and if I heard those noises coming out of my car, I would certainly have concerns. So when it comes to a train and it's that loud, does it have impact on the wheels? Is it from a life cycle perspective or from a possible cracks perspective?
So there's lots to that question, Councillor. It's a good point. So on the noise, yeah, there are decibel limits that they have to comply with. On the, it's called wheel rail interfaces, how much steel is touching the rail, and there's an engineering science to all that. We have done our independent assessment on that, and we've identified that there are portions of the track that need to be grind down, so smooth out, just like a pothole gets fixed, so that you don't get the noise and you don't get the grinding, and it does not lead to not just wheel issues, but vibration of the vehicle. It can start to get things loose and so forth. All railroads have this. I know it's new to Ottawa in terms of we're going to have noisy spots. If you go to Boston, there's one corner that is literally deafening. They've been dealing with it for 30 years. And again, TTC has a lot of experience with their streetcars in this space. But short answer is they need to maintain the railhead. We have identified the locations. Troy and the RTM team are actually going section by section and prioritizing what gets maintained. And I've offered them weekend shutdowns to accelerate that if they want to do that.
Okay, and on that, is this something if we ever did find out that bend was creating too much friction and it was leading to these wheels burning off much quicker? If you look at the lands around it, I don't know if we own them all or if it's expropriation or if we're kind of hemmed in on that corner. Would a realignment be something that we might have to look at just for that one section to really slow down that noise?
Yeah, no, great question. You're hemmed in, and I hate to bring other projects into the mix, but you remember our answer on Woodruff Avenue. Curves are never a good thing on a railroad. They're never a good thing.
Yeah.
And staff are doing their part on Woodruff Avenue. When everybody says, "Oh, just throw in the curve," well, you're going to get another Herdman. It's back-to-back curves on railroads are not good, and you are hemmed in there property-wise and so forth. The Herdman curve will be a maintenance issue forever. You will never have a silent curve there, and you will never not have vibration there. The ones that we're all over right now is what Councillor McKenney was talking about. Approaches to stations is the other spot where you're getting some noise. That needs to be evened out, and the vibrations and so forth. But just so everybody knows, you will never have that perfect quiet. That trip you took in early September, October, I hope you enjoyed that, because that quiet silence is a new railroad. It's like your new car. That smell never comes back.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure somebody's going to create a handle called the Herdman Curve at some point on Twitter. That being said, this oil stuff, I'm very interested in that. Do you mind letting us know when, you probably don't have the date in front of you now, when they do oil the tracks? Because I want to go for a ride on it to see what differences that does make.
Yes, there's a lot of logistics on getting the product and so forth. But when they do it, if they do it, we'll certainly share that with the commission.
Excellent. I'll move along real quick. The gas heater is very excited to see, and it's weird. I guess it's colder in the east end than the west end, going with all gas. How sure are we, and I'm just asking, you've explained this before, that we won't be going back to the west end and putting in gas heaters where the current electric is right now?
So a reminder on the west end, different configuration, different exposure to winds and snow. If you go to Tunney's, it's deep in the trench. Those are electric, but they extended the electrical probes further along the track, and they have the real-time monitoring, not just the on-off. They can do that, and on top of that, we also have our own staff that use thermal guns to monitor them. So the problems were 99% in the east end. That's why we went with the gas ones. And on stage 2, those lessons learned are moving over. We're going to gas predominantly in the west and the stage 2 extension also.
Thank you, John. And last, as we hear news of vaccines and Moderna coming online, I'm starting to feel that people are starting to loosen up a little bit, which isn't a good position to be in. And I think we're doing our best to really tell people continue to wear masks. What's our plan to keep that message going and tell people to keep, it's not over yet. We still have 6 months, a year, who knows how long. How are we going to make sure that that message is there? Because I'm watching your ridership graph. I have a suspicion it's going to start to tick up at some point, and I want to make sure people are still wearing those masks.
Well, a couple of things. Ridership is going to tick up. Ridership is ticking up. Pat is starting to do his work on a route by route. I can't remember which route he was sharing with me. We've got one route that's at about 67% ridership. I think some of the good news is going to rub off in terms of ridership. On the masks issue, we're going to continue to do everything we're doing, but more importantly, we're also going to do another blitz. And so stay tuned for that. We'll do like last time. We'll let everybody know, and we're going to go out and find people if they're not wearing their masks.
Great. Thank you very much for your very honest and straightforward presentation today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up is Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I wasn't going to talk about the Herdman curve, but Mr. Mancone, I heard you say first there is attention that's going to be given to the curve. There's going to be some work to help mitigate some of the noise. And then I heard you say, get used to it. It's going to be noisy forever. So what exactly is going to happen at the curve?
They'll do the rail grinding. That smooths out the steel on the top of the railhead, so there's less noise. It's not all going away. They're looking at this new product that Toronto Transit Commission is using. I just heard about it last week, so I don't have any details and so forth. It's when I was talking to the CEOs I was asking them the exact same question. And then they have to regularly maintain that curve with the grinder and do that. There's now new portable small grinders that can literally be thrown onto the track overnight. And that curve is not long enough, is short enough that they can maintain that. And then also there's greasers that can be deployed both on the track and on the train itself. So those are some longer term things to make sure that those things, if they're using them and they're functioning and all those things. So it's maintenance.
Is it easier to maintain an indoor curve, like after you leave the Rideau Center and you're heading towards Ottawa, there's a curve there, and I'm just looking at emails literally weeks after we opened, I was receiving complaints about the noise on that curve. Is it the same type of maintenance indoors as outdoors?
It is. Indoors can be more problematic. The one I was talking about in Boston is you get the tunnel effect or the station effect, and you get echoing noise. So it depends on the configuration. The ones that the Toronto Commission, Pat knows that system like the back of his hands. If you're downtown surrounded by buildings, you get an echo effect. So it's location by location, but the goal is to minimize the amount of noise. I just want to be clear, it's never going to be perfectly silent.
Yeah. When I go to Toronto on behalf of the city, I don't take taxis. I only take public transit. And you're right, they're noisy. The streetcars are noisy, the subway, particularly on the curbs. Okay, I just want to get into the switch heaters because I raised this last month and I want to raise it again. Good news from Mr. Charter. How were they tested? We have not had freezing rain. We have not had multiple days of heavy snow, which is when the heaters should actually be tested. We're going to know whether they work once they're put to the true test. Mr. Charter, what type of testing did these heaters go through to ensure that we got the okay that they are working properly?
Troy, can you make sure you're very humble, you don't brag enough. Can you share with the commission, you actually took Mr. Brockington's idea and put it into action. So share with them what you did that weekend with the ice block.
Okay. So yes, Mr. Chair, quite a bit of testing was done on all the switch heaters, not just the gas-powered ones, the heat trace elements as well. Obviously, the testing starts with you test all the gas line connections, make sure there's no leaks, all that sort of stuff. So there's things that Enbridge have to do to make sure that they're fit and they're set, and then they turn it over then to RTG to do their final install. So there's those pieces. But no, when the switch heaters were put in place, we start off by move the switches a few times, turn the heater on, turn it off, turn on, make sure it's blowing air. We have the heat gun on it, making sure that it's blowing air all the way down through, because it's not just one small point. You want to, it's a long piece of rail, so you got to get that heat all the way down that whole switch connection. And it's, I wouldn't want to guess at how long it is, but it's a long chunk of track. So there's duct work that has to get all the way to the end. So you're taking the heat gun, and you're also literally feeling with hand are you feeling heat all the way through this duct work? But then we went one step further and brought, Councillor, it was right from yourself, we got big chunks of ice. Good. And we put them in between the switch rails, and we made sure that they melted and how quickly they melted. And so, we got a picture of one where there's a big chunk of ice and you could see it slowly going down, and it's not touching the rail. It's just in between where the switch moves back and forth. It's right there. And you can see that big chunk of ice continuing melting, and it melts really fast. So, that's a chunk of ice. Snow falling should turn to water right away. So we did all that. And then, since we've had the switch heaters installed, we have our field staff. They're going out and checking. So overnight, when we can access the line without trains running, they can get close and make sure they hear and feel it. But we also, we have them armed with those heat guns as well, so that they're checking throughout to make sure that, okay, there's no alarms in the TOCC saying that the switch heater's not working. Let's go double check. And we've been doing that. So what we're doing is we're doing that on a sort of a random basis. But then when there's a weather event coming, we're going full tilt, and we're checking all those switches and having that double check until the confidence level is there with everyone. But we're going to be doing that through this winter.
Excellent, thank you. I was wondering, Chair, if you could have the graph that Mr. Scrimger showed us about the ridership numbers just put up back on the screen. I have a question.
Certainly, Eric, is that possible?
Thank you for that, Chair. There's basically three phases I'm looking at here. The first third is basically the shock of COVID. People have stopped going to work and school. And then about mid to late June, our ridership went up for about 2 full months. And at around Labor Day, maybe it's when school started, it went down and it's more or less plateaued. So to Mr. Scrimger, what happened in the summer? We had no tourists. What happened in the summer that gave us higher ridership? And then what's caused it to plateau? Is it just kids going back to school? If you could just talk to that phase, because obviously I want to get as high as ridership as possible. What happened between mid-June and Labor Day?
Mr. Chair, I think each of us might remember from our own experience that from the we started to understand, we started to accept, and we started to know how to work within the pandemic. Through this period where the time when things happened, like masks became available to everyone, people understood that wearing a mask, they could be in closer contact with people. And I think you start to see that in that uptick from May through to July. That's when, the weather was getting better. We started to normalize what we were doing. We all started to stretch our arms a little further, walk a little further, go into stores more than we had been during the early months. And then in June, we had two things happen specifically on OC Transpo, and that was that the masks became mandatory for everybody. That gave everyone the assurance that they were protected from respiratory transmissions when they were on the train and on the bus. And then at the end of June, we returned to full service. You remember we had service reductions in place from March until about the 20th of June. And that brought more routes back into service. That gave more opportunity to travel at other times, and gave us more capacity to handle those people, to accommodate those people. So that's probably what that big uptick there is from sort of mid-June to early July. Then we had a continuous increase through the summer as more and more people got used to how to behave. Or, I wouldn't be the one to speak on it, but you'll remember that the numbers started to go up, and the public health officials and at OPH and at the province realized that our infection rate was going up too much, and they changed the advice, and we went into sharper, more stringent restrictions. And that would have been from mid-September through to early November. And at this point, people are probably being, continuing at that level of caution. The other thing I want to speak about just a little bit is just on the calculation method. This is not a graph that shows absolute ridership. This is a graph that is showing ridership as a percentage of ridership that we would have expected to experience on each of those days. So when we're comparing summer ridership, we're comparing it to summer actual 2020 to summer non-pandemic ridership. There's going to be different travel patterns through from late June to early September every year. And one of the things that doesn't happen is people aren't traveling to high school during that period. So and there's more people taking holidays. And that's going to change the proportion of what type of trips are being made on the system. There will just be fewer school trips and normally fewer university trips made during the summer, the 2 months for the high schools, the 4 months for the universities. And then when you get to September, that all comes back. So some of that change that you see in early September, which looks like a very sharp change, is just that the denominator in the ratio was changing at that time.
Fair enough. I think for us as a commission, looking at high level data is of course very important, which helps us inform us to make decisions. But when you look at all these factors about, mask use and additional service, our COVID numbers in Ottawa were very low in the summer. So I agree with you that there was probably a greater acceptance by the public to get out. That type of analysis is very important for us when we want to move forward and have to talk about other initiatives to increase ridership. Do you have information about the weekday peak ridership on LRT, weekday peak ridership on buses? Because we have been getting some stats, but we don't see the actual numbers. Like pre-COVID, February-ish, LRT was peaking about 185,000 riders a day. What is that today, for example?
Chair, I don't know if Pat's got that off the top. I'll let him respond, but I just want to also share with you that as part of the report that we're bringing to you in terms of criteria for you to approve, we are bringing you a bunch of data. I had a counselor at the budget meeting ask about individual routes, so I've instructed Pat to do that. We're going to do by station, by route. We're going to bring you all that. But Pat, share what we've got so far if you can today. Otherwise, Chair, I just want to give you assurance we are absolutely aligned. We're bringing you all that information.
Thanks, John. And you're right. No, I don't have that specific number here with me today, but I can, I'll say that what you see on this is the percentage of ridership on the complete system. That we're, floating around 28, 30% and have been for 2 months now. That's not the case everywhere on the system. That's the overall number, but there are bus stops, stations, the train line, and different bus routes that are used differently by different customers. There are some bus routes that are predominantly used by people who are traveling to offices and to universities, the two things that are more closed than anything else. There are other bus routes that are more used by people who are traveling to hospitals, employment locations, shopping areas, and those are higher than this percentage. The train is running because the train, I won't say predominantly, but more than anything else, is used by people who are traveling to or from offices in downtown and to or from the universities. Those are the two largest groups of customers who use O Train Line 1, and they are traveling obviously much, much less and not very much to their normal destinations. And so ridership on the O Train is at about 20% of where it would normally be. On the other hand, ridership on all the bus routes put together is higher, is more like 40% of all of where it would normally be. And that's how you get this average of 28, 30%. But individual bus routes and individual times and individual bus stops are either, very high, at the average, low, or very low. And it really depends on the travel that's being made by those people, and has been now. So we continue to collect this data, but one thing I want to just caution everybody on is history does not, recent history does not help us necessarily to understand the future. This is not predictive. This is documentary, and it shows what has occurred. I think at this point it's reasonable to think that tomorrow and the next day and the next day will be similar to the last few days. But what next month will bring and the month after that, we're not equipped to predict.
I appreciate that. It's certainly not my intent to get into the minutia, but going back to Mr. Manconi's, when will the Transit Commission receive this report with respect to the key metrics that we're going to use going forward?
March or April, Councillor. So we're going to do our best to get it in March. I'm trying to get all that data, and we will now with, things are moving fast, vaccines, trends, and so forth. So those are the tentative target dates.
The one question
1 minute left.
Thank you. The one question I wanted to raise again from last month was your analysis on a correlation between private car usage and public transit, because you were saying that your data on the roads was much higher as a percentage pre-COVID now, as opposed to transit riders. I think you said, John, that on some roads you were hitting 80% capacity pre-COVID, and we're struggling now at 28% public transit. So, because I was worried that there's a perception out there that people don't feel comfortable or safe getting on public transit because of COVID concerns, which I don't personally share, but was part of the stigma through a public education campaign or other to chisel away at that. Can you speak to that any further today? Data on what we're seeing on the roads and why that is the case? Why is the uptake on personal vehicle usage so much higher than people getting back on public transit?
So we are going to bring you the car data also, even though this is for Transit Commission, because Phil Landry and VVHE have done an amazing job of where people are commuting with non-public transit. And what it appeared to, this is about a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, was in suburban neighborhoods, there was a lot of car commutes. So people were going to their local grocers and so forth. They were task oriented. They needed a vehicle rather than public transit. Don't know if that's the case yet. I haven't seen the refresh data. We'll absolutely bring you that and try to correlate it to the transit data. On the when do people use it? One of the things, and again, I'll bring you all that from CUDA and the other partners that have done the surveys. It is the surveys repeat over and over again that the individual choice to whether or not they're going to use public transit and whether they deem it safe, even with all those international studies that have shown not one single COVID case related to public transit, they basically say each person will make their own personal decision on when they deem it safe to ride public transit. And so hence the messaging of we're clean, we're disinfecting, we're continuing, all those things. So all of that's coming to you in that March, April report in terms of data, and also in terms of, because you know the message is clear. We want to grow the ridership. So we're going to have information campaigns on how we get people back to the service. But right now, the advice from the professionals in this space, based on scientific and survey data, just keep the system clean, keep it reliable. People need to make their own personal choices. Once post-vaccine comes in, you can start to push a little bit harder in terms of getting people back.
Yeah, Chair, I think whatever we can all do to help reinforce the message that it is safe to take public transit, that yes, there's a pandemic, but with mask wearing and you know, cleaning your hands and take all the precautions that OPH has suggested, it is safe. I take it with my girls. I promote it. But we all have a I think a responsibility to help communicate that message to get people back on transit. So I'll leave it there. But thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brockton. Next up is Commissioner Sarah Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a lot of my questions with regard to the wheel cracks were asked by my colleague, Councillor McKenney, so I thank them for that. I have two follow-up questions about the wheel cracks, specifically the TSB letter. Has there been any follow-up by RTG or OC Transport Management with Lucchini, I think that's how you pronounce it, the wheel manufacturer, as to why there was a change in process? So the letter says there was a change in process, the jack screws, which I also now know more about jack screws than I ever thought I would. The jack screws were shipped in the wheels rather than separately. Why didn't it communicate this change in process to Alstom? Specifically the requirement for examination to ensure that none of the screws, I'm reading here, sorry, protruded or otherwise interfered with the axle hub. So has there been any follow-up with Lucchini about this sort of lack of communication and this change in process?
I'm going to let our Chief Safety Officer comment on that. I would, not sure there was lack of communication anywhere, but Brandon?
Oh, thank you, Chair. To answer your question, the TSB has their independent investigation, and this is a part of their next process. They're going to be looking into the actual supplier's information with what Alstom's doing when it comes down to the metals that are used and all the process stuff that you're capturing right there. This is something that they directly go to the manufacturer. They directly go to Alstom as they are independent. So when it comes to the communication as to why that process changed, we don't have that information right now, and that will come out in TSB's investigation.
Okay, thank you. So according to the TSB letter, these screws, these jack screws, were never supposed to be installed in the wheels. They're only usage, they're only supposed to be installed or used or put into the wheels when the wheels are being removed, right? That they're supposed to be shipped with plastic or silicone plugs, and the screws are supposed to be shipped separately. How is it possible, and I ask this with all due respect, but how is it possible that no one noticed that these screws were installed in the wheels, given that, when they shouldn't be, and I mean no one at RTG or RCM or whatever we're calling them these days, that no one noticed that these screws were installed when they shouldn't be on all these wheels, given that there are supposedly inspections happening regularly?
So again, you need to let the TSB investigation roll out is my advice to you. I remind everyone that on the entire project, there was an independent safety officer whose signature is on those certificates that says the system was safe to proceed. So this isn't about someone not looking or not inspecting. There are hundreds of thousands of parts on a train. And I know in isolation, this looks like a, how could you miss that? I'm not defending RTG. I'm not defending the wheel manufacturer. I'm just telling you that the process for safety certification was followed. The independent safety certifier of the system being able to proceed signed off on everything. That includes vehicle and infrastructure and so forth. So there's no signs of anybody, oops, we missed something that we should have caught. And again, I know it looks simple on in isolation, but this is a, you know, these vehicles have hundreds of thousands of components on it. And you literally have to get in there and look at those pieces and so forth. But we don't want this to occur. I agree with you, Commissioner. How can this happen? That's TSB is there. That's their job. They will say, how did it happen? Why did it happen? And how do you prevent it from happening? Again, the TSB does not give recommendations. They give findings. And we look forward to their findings and we communicate with them literally every day on our operations. So I wish I had that answer for you. I do not. But the TSB report, I know Mr. Johnson very well. He will be at this. That's why they take a year to do these things. In the meantime, we want to make sure that the system's safe for everybody. So I want to know those answers too. And safety is what we're all focused on right now.
I look forward to the TSB's findings as well, and I'll look forward to reading that report in detail, and hopefully we'll have a discussion about it at Transit Commission. What I will say is this, as well, I am very well aware that there are hundreds of thousands of parts in a train. There is, and on each train, and we have an independent safety officer who signed off on this system. It would be my hope or my assumption that a safety officer is looking at all of these components on a train to ensure that there's not something wrong. And if they've signed off on a train system that clearly has parts in the wheels of the train that shouldn't be there, then for me personally, it calls into question this independent safety officer. Moving away from the wheel cracks, because it sounds like we're going to have to wait for the TSB report. So in the presentation, Mr. Charter was talking about we've had some reliability issues with the LRT during December, but also during November. So I undertook a little bit of a project. So according to OC Transpo's own text alerts, which I know a lot of us get, since this commission last met, which was on November 18th, until today, there have been 28 days. According to its own text alerts, during that 28-day period, there have been issues resulting in reduced or delayed service on the Confederation line, line 1, on 10 of those 28 days. I have a breakdown. I'd be happy to give it to you, but the dates are November 18, 19, 3 separate issues on the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, December 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10. I should note that in fairness, I did remove 2 events. I did not include 2 events that led to a delay in reduction in service. Those 2 events were the smell of gas at the switch heaters and the fire alarm at Lion Station, because no one can really plan for that. So 10 days with instances of reduced or delayed service out of a total of 28 days is 35.7% of the days. 35, almost 36% of the days in a 28-day period, we had reduced service of 15 minutes or more, reduced or delayed service. These are reliability issues. So while we're hitting 96% and the metrics that are being shown on the slides look
50 seconds left.
Decent. Thank you. Relatively decent. There's reliability issues. They seem to be specific to brake faults and stop trains. And so I'd like to have a little bit more of an explanation for these issues. And is there a plan in place to increase our reliability on line 1?
Chair, I'm aware of all those. I think we've answered all those questions. It's before you today. Everything's in the deck. Responds to everything. It's our target is 97%. In November, we're at 98%. Any railroad will never operate at 100%. on brake faults and every other issue that affects the railroad. It's all part of the monitoring that we're doing. And we are aware of all those instances. And in terms of those interruptions, it's how those interruptions are mitigated. And our TG and RTM is doing a much better job of mitigating those delays or those impacts to service. And doing things like we had a stalled train on Rideau last week and service continued and it worked around the train. And yes, there is a setup component to that diversion, but any railroad around the world will have interruptions. And so in terms of the outcomes, it's the data that's before you. And in terms of what causes those delays, it's everything that Mr. Charter has walked you through.
With respect, I don't think the deck actually, I have 30 seconds left, Mr. Chair. I don't think the deck actually does answer my questions. You know, this is 10 instances, 10 days out of 28 where there have been issues on the line. It speaks to reliability of line one. And so with respect, I don't think that the metrics that are being presented to us in the deck actually do answer my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up is Councillor Meehan, please.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, Chair, and good morning, fellow colleagues. I have a question, number one, I guess just a sort of follow up to what Commissioner Wright was asking. I know the Transportation Safety Board comes in at a certain time in an investigation, but last July, or this past July, when we discovered the cracks in the wheels, I'm assuming that the city went to Alstom and said, hey, what the heck is this? Why do we have these wheels cracking? And I'm just wondering, at that stage, before Transportation Safety Board was brought in, what was their response to the fact that that the wheels were cracking? And you know, were all the trains inspected at that point? Like, when were the jacking screws discovered? And what was their response at that time before the TSB got involved?
Certainly, I'll let Mr. Brandon walk you through that. But actually, it was Alstom that came to us that said, hey, we have an issue and we're looking at it. And their response to me that immediate day was, and we will tell you if we have to ground the fleet and so forth. So Brandon, can you walk them through those touch points and when TSB was notified?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And you're right, absolutely. And what we do right away when we have any sort of occurrence like this, we report to the TSB immediately. So the TSB was engaged right off the start, but you're right. We immediately had the conversations with Alstom as to what we do next. And they took it away, just like Mr. Manconi said. It was the conversation of grounding the fleet or not. And if you do remember it from Troy Charter's presentation earlier, there was a reduced service in July due to this, because if you remember that time, we had a very reduced fleet because the visual inspection process was happening. Before we actually put the visual inspection process in place to ensure the fleet was safe, we did have many conversations throughout that time with our experts, like John said, the meteorologist, with Alstom, with their chief safety officer, and engaging in conversations with the TSB, because before they announce their investigation, they do have a period of time where they do an inquisition and we do discussions as to what's happening. And then Alstom did come to us with their preliminary assessment, which was that the jacking screw was causing the issue. Now, to the conversation that was happening beforehand, it's abnormal for Lucchini based on the TSB report, but it's not that it's incorrect that the jacking screws were in place in the wheel. It's just that they were too far into the wheel, and that's where this has gone wrong.
So I don't want to interrupt, but I still don't understand. I understand the TSB had to be involved, but Alstom had identified the problem. Obviously, they're responsible for the issue. They just didn't correct it.
Chair, can I jump in? Councillor, those are really great questions. I'm really concerned about staff commenting on root cause and fault. I'm trying to protect yourselves and ourselves here. The TSB is very regulated and regimented, and I just want to caution my staff on making comments about fault and cause and solutions. We need to let the TSB do their job. And Chair, you're welcome to contact the TSB directly. I don't think they will share information, but I'm not trying to be difficult and not give you responses.
No, Mr. Manconi, it just said we bought a product, and usually then we would have a relationship with the product manufacturer who obviously messed up. So
we actually don't. We actually don't.
No?
Your relationship, no. And this is the thing. Your relationship was with RTM. You do not have a commercial relationship with Alstom. And I'm cautioning you to protect you. Don't get into blaming Alstom, because you'll go down the litigation route is what could potentially happen with Alstom. Let the TSB be your advisor on this very important. This is like a recall on your car, which are very serious, right? We've all had cars where you get that notice and they say, hey, there's a recall. And many of us have that same reaction that Commissioner Gilbert had. You know, I just had a recall on my car and I went, how could you have missed that? And whether it's safety major, and there's been major safety recalls on vehicles and so forth, but your business relationship is with RTM. It is not with Alstom. The accountability rests with RTM. Alstom did their job and immediately reported to the RTM officials and reported it to us. Our staff immediately contacted TSB, and we immediately asked if we needed to ground the fleet.
Okay, let me just go on then. There was one thing that Mr. Charter mentioned that I would like a little bit more clarification on, and that had to do with the catenary, the overhead catenary system. And Mr. Charter said that the crews are doing daily, they're doing daily work on the catenary system. I'm just wondering what exactly is being done there.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, nothing, nothing specific on the OCS, but they have every night, the maintenance crews are out on the line, they're inspecting the track, they're inspecting the OCS. They need to be checking these things. And actually, we want them out there. It's when you should be concerned is when we don't see them out there. We want those engineering crews out there every night looking at things. So, when they're looking at the catenary system, so when you get into the winter time, the cold, things tend to contract. They may need to adjust, on the poles that hold the catenary system, you see what we call counterweights, and they keep that line nice and tight. They may need to adjust the tension and make some adjustments like that, but they're out there and they're checking the line. They're checking those parafills where we had some issues last year with those parafills breaking. They're checking those things. They're checking the catenary, make sure it's not sagging anywhere. They're making sure that there's no places where it can snag. And then, there's other times where they go out there and they get in more detail look, they get right in there to see if there's any buildup or any damage that's occurring just with the regular day-to-day use. But they're out every night. And, looking at the overhead catenary system is one of the things that they check.
And is this going to continue for the life of the line?
Yes.
Okay, good for them. On the cleaning of the trains, we're spending $1.5 million extra to do a sterilization of the train to make sure that it's really safe for people due to COVID. I'm trying to figure out then why we're getting complaints that the trains are dirty. And I just need to have a response, because I know that we've got crews that are doing, they're cleaning areas that normally would not be cleaned, but why are we seeing garbage and basically that's my question.
Councillor, if there's the odd garbage, I get that, but if you have any specifics, get your staff to immediately send it to Troy. We will trace down that train, and they're cleaned every single evening. So
this is happening. I'm getting it from various people on various routes, so I'm just not sure what's happening. Are we concentrating on handles and at the, maybe forgetting other spots? That's basically what my question is. So
if it's the trains, they get detail cleaning every single evening and in between. So time of day, direction, anything you can give us if people are on there, we want to know about it.
So have we employed extra people to do the COVID cleaning?
RTM has employed extra people. We employed 65 new cleaners for our buses. And there's a safety seal on every vehicle that rolls out. So the operator goes to their vehicle and there's a safety seal on that vehicle to say it's gone through their deep clean.
Excellent. Thank you. That's it for me. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up is Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to ask more about the noise. I was a little concerned when you said that that new train feeling, we're not going to get it back. And that we're going to have more noise. And I think that that's something that will concern people and turn people off using the system. So how is it we're addressing that? And in terms of both the people inside the train and also people who live near the train tracks, because we know that that was an issue as well. And going forward, how are we fixing that?
So again, it's the maintenance, but in addition to that, a lot of the stations are areas where there's issues. We have rail dampeners on the rail fasteners, but regular maintenance is the best ally in terms of minimizing that noise. And again, we are looking at new products with RTM on noise issues. The problem right now is Herdman should not be at the noise level that it's at right now. It's a double back-to-back curve, very tight, sharp radius. You will always have some noise, but it's the level of noise is excessive in the vibration. So they need to get that. And then at some of the locations where the brake start stop, again, it's like the potholes in a road approaching the intersection and so forth. They can't have that pitting. So it's regular maintenance. And then in extreme cases, we've done some stuff in the trenches. We put in the special dampeners so that they can meet the decibel reading near condos and so forth. And then even in the tunnel, you'll recall, near the NAC, there's special concrete and special dampeners on the track. So there's a lot of mitigation measures you can do for noise.
So these are lessons learned for going forward, dare I say, for the next stage?
Yeah, they are, and they're more than that. I mean, it's all basic railroad design and things that you do in terms of, Councillor Cavan, if you're looking at the stage 2, the split at Lincoln Fields and so forth, those radiuses, they're not as sharp as Herdman and so forth. Councillor Leeper's dealing with, we've done rail dampeners in his area, one condo location and so forth. So it's design, good technology, and then regular maintenance, just like a road or a bike lane or anything else.
Okay. Yes, it's something I hear about a lot, and as the main concern, and also for the people who are riding on the train. I mean, how does it compare to traffic, for example? Because it's supposed to be replacing the buses. So if you compare it to buses, what is the comparison?
Again, very quiet in the train on the straight stretches. Herdman's is noisy, and in some key locations, stop starts, and we want to eliminate that noise. So any train makes noise, but they have to do some maintenance on the track. Okay,
thank you. Okay, so we've been open up for, I guess it's about a year and 2 months now, so we're dealing with these maintenance issues with this TSB report. When does it end? When do we say we've got this under control, and that we're because we're trying to build confidence, of course, in for our ridership. So what does it look like in terms of going forward for building confidence in ridership?
So 2 parts to that. Great question. Reliability and consistency in that reliability. So we're building up. We're hitting some good numbers. The second part for you folks as our board of governors or our bosses is the independent assessment follow-up that we're in deep now, looking at all those elements, the catenary, the track, the systems, and so forth. Once we get that report for our independent assessors, we'll then come back and be able to tell you, hey, we've got things that look problem-free. Again, I'm very cautious. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think we can breathe easier once we get through winter and we see how the switch heaters have worked. We have, knock on wood, we've not had any of those CVS issues that we had last year during freezing rain events. So we've had some of that already. The software is working well. The door issues, the software is working very, very well on that stuff. So, but I want to see that independent assessment, and I want to get through winter months, and then I think we can breathe easier and say that, we're there. It is not uncommon for systems to have issues. We've had a disproportionately amount of issues on this system. I know that, but I have to finish with this. It's a phenomenal system. It's changed the city forever. It's unleashing the potential of stage 2 and stage 3. The uptake on build up is great. You're seeing the intensification along the corridor. I was at Rideau Station yesterday. It felt alive again. I was in there in the deep, bowels of COVID, and it was, empty. And yesterday I got excited seeing people using the system. So I'm an optimist. It's a great system, and the industry and the world does talk about it both in a challenging way, but also in a positive way. Not forgetting that nobody's ever done what we've done anywhere in the world, converted a live system of BRT to rail.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Mr. Manconi, for reminding us of all the virtues of the system. A couple of questions for me, if I could, please. Following up on Councillor Meehan's comments, I think I'd like to be a little more clear here, because I know, I was at Rideau with you yesterday, and I see not just on the train system, but on the bus lines, we have vehicles going around cleaning the bus stops and everything on an ongoing basis. If someone spots garbage, let's just call it, say it's a coffee cup, on a train or on a bus, if they alert their counselor, and their counselor in turn alerts your folks, they get out there, they get that right away. Nobody's saying that they've seen a coffee cup or a water bottle on the same spot on a train for 2 or 3 days or anything like that. The staff go through these trains several times a day picking stuff up, but a deep clean overnight. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
So if we're concerned with garbage on the train, maybe one of the things we should be doing here is going to the source of the problem. This is somebody that took a coffee cup on the train or a water bottle, finished their cup, and just decided to throw it on the floor when they were done. I've been on systems in Europe, for example, where other passengers turn around and stare at that person until they pick up their garbage, because they all take a shared responsibility for keeping that train or bus clean. So I think if Councillor Meehan is hearing a lot of reports about this happening on the system, whether it be coming out of Riverside South or the trains downtown, whatever, I would encourage all commission members to make sure that any reports on that come back to us so that we can look at what's doing. But also to if you're on the train yourself and you see someone doing that, maybe ask them to, why'd you do that? Because we have waste receptacles at all the stations and everything. So there isn't really a need to throw it on the floor when you're done with it. The other question I had for you, Mr. Manconi, is to go back to the TSB report. I didn't see any mention in that report about concerns with what our safety procedures are, what our inspections are, or our safety inspectors themselves. Are you aware of any concerns by TSB about that work?
Mr. Richards, our safety officer, has been at every meeting with TSB, and every meeting he ends it with, is there any safety concerns? And is there anything that I need to tell the general manager about the fleet? And there has been no issues. And again, I know that TSB was in communication with Brandon yesterday saying they're very supportive of everything that is going on. They will not approve what's going on, but they're not objecting to it. And so Brandon confirmed for committee, there's been no objections from TSB on everything to date, correct?
That's correct, John.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manconi. Okay, seeing no more questions, can we receive this update, please?
Received.
Thank you. Okay, so our next item is item number 2, the delegation of authority for contracts awarded from the period of January 1st to June 30th, 2020 for the Transit Commission. I believe Commissioner Wright-Gilbert, you held that. Did you want to ask your questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I took a close look at this delegation of authority, just given that these are contracts over the amount of $25,000 that are awarded or amended. And I appreciate that you're providing us with these reports. So I do just have a few questions. Page 1, line 1, which is the amended contract in the amount of $919,805, is for professional operations and maintenance services for the city's Stage 1 Confederation Line project requirements. Can you provide some detail in terms of what's included in this amended increased amount?
We have our Chief Procurement Officer here. Will, did you want to comment on that?
Well, Mr. Chair, this is an amendment for additional services related to the professional services contract that was awarded by Council to STV related to the Stage 1 development. Is there I've deferred to Mr. Manconi's team if there was a specific comment around the additional work, but I'd be happy to speak to the mechanisms under the procurement bylaw by which we amended that contract.
No, I'm not interested in the mechanisms. I do appreciate your offer though, Mr. McDonald. My question is the amount was increased for the contract. And I'm just wondering what is included in this contract with SCBT? What services are they providing us for this amount of money?
Mr. Charter will correct me if I go wrong, and I'll follow up with you if there's anything lacking. I believe all of that is on the additional oversight, which is all getting billed back to RTM. So when I talk about that wheel expert, STV has that wheel expert on staff. So Commissioner, I'm happy to pull out the extra work on the stage 1 piece and get you all the details related to that. Troy, do I have that correctly?
Yeah, that is correct, John, yes.
So this is essentially salary dollars for the various experts that we've brought in as a result of issues with line 1.
Correct.
Perfect. That's a good explanation that is helpful. Thank you. I'm just using the page number and the line number just in case any of you folks are following along. So hope that's helpful. Page 1, line 14, amended contract amount of $97,528, which is all labor, equipment, and materials to remove and dispose of a concrete slab at Parliament Station. Can we hear a little bit more about this concrete slab removal, i.e. why was it removed?
Troy, I believe that's yours.
That's mine, John.
Oh, Pat, sorry.
This is about installing the bus shelters at the stations once the work was completed by RTG to restore the street in order to build the shelters that exist at Parliament Station and at Bayview Station.
So it cost an additional $97,528 to build these bus shelters, remove the concrete slab and build bus shelters a year and a bit after the system had opened?
This is to complete the work. This is not, I'll remind everyone on the commission, this is for the period from January to June of this year. So that's approximately 4 months after to 8 months after the line opened. Not doing my math very quickly in my head. There was at all of these, at all stations, there remained work that needed to be done that was not part of the contract to RTG that council awarded. One of the things that progressed after that initial contract award was the design of bus shelters at locations, and so there needed to be electrical work, there needed to be physical work. The shelters were delivered and installed, and we use a range of contractors to complete all that work, and this is one of them.
Okay, but just to be clear, that $97,000 amount has nothing to do with building a shelter. It's actually just for the removal of a concrete slab, correct? I mean, that's what the line item says. It says specifically labor, equipment, and materials to remove and dispose of concrete slab at Parliament Station.
And to provide additional work to power the Bayview Station shelter.
Okay.
So it's a combined at both. We have custom designed shelters at both of those stations, or at least on the westbound side at Bayview and in both directions at Parliament. And those needed there was quite a bit of work required to connect those electrically, which involved cutting into the concrete and making the electrical connections, putting in the electrical housings, whatever they're called, and connecting and meeting Hydro Ottawa standards.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Because it just seemed a little bit pricey for concrete slab removal. Not that I have a whole ton of experience in removing concrete slabs, but just logic. My last question is about page 2, line 37. This is the one that confused me the most, to be honest with you, which is supply and deliver ultra low sulfur diesel fuel for on-site direct to locomotive refueling services for the Trillium line, which is amended contract amount of $340,023. Why are we adding funds to a fuel contract on a line that is not running for the next 2 years?
Troy.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that was for the period of time in which the line was still running. We closed the line down in April, May. So that was the period of time from January to the time in which the line shut down.
Okay, so this is for additional fuel funds, basically, between.
It's the fuel used to run the service, correct?
So we didn't budget for that amount in the original contract amount. I'm just wondering why the amount was amended by 300.
The contract needed to be amended to get us to shutdown date. So the contract originally ended at the end of the year. So we amended it to, instead of renewing a whole new 2, 3, 4 years,
Right.
we amended the contract to get us to the shutdown.
Okay, that's very helpful context. Thank you, Mr. Charter. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up is Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question, and I don't see it here, but perhaps in this report, but we discussed about an app update for people to find their bus, and I wonder if there's been contracts awarded for that, if that's coming up. That was, I understand it was supposed to be in progress. So do we have anything new on that?
Mr. Chair, the work continues. Some of the work is behind the scenes. What we've been working on primarily is something called an API, which is I will not describe it well, but it's the interface that connects all of our internal systems, where it publishes the data in a way that the independent apps and other software users and developers can pick it up from to use it for their purposes. We've been updating that app so that it works with our new bus tracking and dispatch system that's in testing right now with the developers. What that will result in initially is slightly more stability on that data feed, but by sometime in 2021, when we can bring our new control system into place, replacing our outdated one, then we'll get more precise data and better predictions of bus arrival times, which we'll be able to publish out. Now, separately from that work, we are also looking into what is the best way to bring our own OC Transpo app up to date in a forward-facing, what you see on the screen. We want to bring that up to date. What we've been working on primarily is the data that you don't see, the data that come to that app and to the various other independent apps. So that work is continuing, and some of it continues under existing contracts that we have. In fact, some of the consultants that you see listed on this table are working on that. Among other things, they work on supporting our various systems.
That would be great to have that when that ridership goes back up. Are we working at a target date to have that available to the public?
So it's a very incremental thing. Some of that improved data, some of those improved data are out there with coming through the apps already, and it will continue as more and more. There's many data sources that feed, and there's many outlets through which customers can collect the data. We're continuously improving. Even when we're all done, we won't be all done, because there'll be more improvements to come after that. But when we make large overt improvements, we'll be sure to let you know.
I expect everybody will want to know. So thank you very much, Pat.
Good, thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Pat, for your answers on this. So the recommendation is that the Transit Commission and Council receive this report for information. So I'll ask the question: is this report received?
Received.
Thank you all. Okay, so there's no in-camera items today. Is there any notices of motion for our next meeting? Okay, seeing none. Are there any inquiries? All right, seeing none. Under other business, does anybody have anything? No? Okay, I just would like to take this opportunity before we adjourn to wish everybody happy holidays, and also to thank Jocelyn. As John mentioned at the outset, this is her last meeting with us. She's been amazing to work with, and I hope she enjoys her retirement, and maybe we'll see her on the train one day. So can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Adjourn, and special thanks to Jocelyn. Happy
Thank you,
retirement.
Anna. Okay, is that motion carried, folks?
Merci, Jocelyn.
Okay,
Merci.
thank you. Our next meeting is February 17th, 2021. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.